Hello viewer, we're back in Kerbal Space Program. We're going to try another video on that. Initially this video was going to be about how to do a landing on one of the moons, specifically Minmus, that being easier than the closer moon. However, it turns out that although I've unlocked a few things in parts and technology since the last video, which was the flyby of the moon, I do not have enough funds available to unlock the vehicle construction building, vehicle assembly building, in order to make a rocket complex enough to be able to actually give me the delta V that I need to get there. So instead in this video we're going to do a orbital rendezvous, because that's another very important topic that's very difficult for some people to understand. The first time I attempted to do it was while I was still playing in early access, and initially it took me about 90 minutes or so after getting my ship in orbit and trying to rendezvous with a second ship, and it was extremely frustrating at the time. I kept trying to force the orbit. It just simply was not working, so it kept failing and failing, and I couldn't figure out how to read the nav ball. So hopefully this video is going to be a little bit of help to you guys. Now, in terms of what I've unlocked batteries and I've unlocked solar panels, and that's going to allow me to do a little bit of additional stuff while we're in orbit. I've already sent Jeb up into orbit. He's orbiting at about 150 kilometers. We're going to try to rendezvous with him with this craft. So we'll put some solar panels on, we'll put some batteries on. Let me find out if I have an antenna mounted on this thing. I do not. So I'm going to mount an antenna. And we're just going to do one-way symmetry. Okay, now those of you that watched the flyby of the moon might recognize this is the exact same rocket. All I've added is the batteries, the solar panel, the antenna to it. And I think the one other change that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a heat shield onto it, because that's something that I forgot to do last time, and although you don't necessarily need it, it's a good habit to get into. So we'll do a 1.25 heat shield. We'll tweak that down to about 80 for the ablator. You don't really need more than that, and anything else is just carrying additional weight. And then the rocket's hooked up to it. Okay, that should be it. We should be ready to launch. We're going to try to do a rendezvous in orbit with Jeb. And who is my crew on this? Looks like Valentine is going up. Alright, so out to the launch pad. So we'll turn on SAS, we'll throttle up the engine. I thought that was interactive. And I realized that somebody did tell me that there's a command for throttling up and down. I tend to not use that because it'll tend to overdo the throttle. And also, I don't even remember what they said it was. I haven't played this game a huge amount recently, so I'm a little behind on the keyboard commands and stuff like that, but I've still got all the knowledge in my head. And the untitled spacecraft is the one that Jeb is in. We'll set that to the target right off the bat. It's as close to 150 kilometers as I could get it. And it was launched in an exact clone of this rocket. Now, I suppose one strategy might be to wait until he's almost overhead before I launch, and it'll put me a little bit closer to him. So maybe I'm going to do that. I'm going to accelerate time a little bit. And I'm going to let him come around the corner of the planet. This would be us here, Kerbal Space Center. And this is actually another rescue that I'm supposed to do. However, you need to have a capsule that's got, what do you call them now? Probe cores. Basically unmanned computer guidance. Okay, just at a guess, I'm going to say that'll put me reasonably close. But it doesn't really matter because what I'm going to show you will work in basically any orbital position. So we'll switch to maneuver node. SAS is active. We're throttled down again. And then we're ready to launch. And this is Valentina's first launch in this save. So she's looking pretty excited about this. Oh, and as you may remember from last time, those should be in separate stages, because if you fire the booster right off the bat, you might explode them right into the side of your rocket. Okay, so Apoasis is 47 kilometers. Our goal is 150. We're into the upper atmosphere, so we can start doing our gravity turn. At 30 kilometers, we should be about 30 degrees over. Typically, you want to use about 10 degrees per 10 kilometers as a sort of a baseline. 50 kilometers, we should be 50 degrees leaned over. Actually, we started at 90, so we want to be down at 40. Oh, and I'm not paying close enough attention because I've already gone above our target altitude. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to keep myself gaining speed without gaining any more altitude. And I'm kind of watching this number here to try to keep it from going up too high above 150. But I'm trying to keep this number going up to about 2200. And we're about 2 minutes away from that. And I go a little bit nose down to get it to drop a little bit. I'm not at full throttle because I don't want to make huge changes here. Once I get a little bit closer to it, then I can start throttling up a little bit more. Need about another 700 meters a second. I have plenty of delta V for that. And as you can see, I'm adjusting my trajectory here to try to keep this as close to 150 as I can, but to try to get this one up out of the atmosphere. Okay, so I've got 150 for my apoasis, and my periapsis at 102. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. Now, if we go to the map screen here, these are the intersect point. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have one spot on my orbit intersect with this craft. And right now my closest intersect is when my craft is here, the target craft is going to be here. So it's still behind me, so I need to slow down. So I need to raise my AP a little bit, or my periapsis a little bit more. But I don't want to do that for about 3 minutes or so. And what that's going to do is it's going to put me into a slightly larger orbit and cause me to slow down in relation to this craft. Or rather, I'm not going to be moving slower than the craft. It's going to take me longer to complete my orbit. So the next orbit around will be, I'll end up getting a little bit closer to him. And you'll end up doing that over a series of orbits. And it kind of depends on, if you're behind him, you want to have part of your orbit lower so that you'll catch up. So you're flying a shorter distance. And if you're in front of him, then you want to have part of your orbit above his so that you're taking longer and he's catching up to you. And what's going to happen is these two markers, as soon as I get to this marker, these two markers are going to move further apart because he's moving a longer path than me since I'm on a tighter orbit. And as soon as I hit that, it's going to show the next one. These are going to spread apart a little bit more. Right now it says that they're going to be 152 kilometers apart. Nope, sorry. Separation, 255 kilometers. And you see how they've jumped further apart? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a maneuver node here. And I'm going to increase it until these two markers come together. 9.7 kilometers, 11, and I'm using the mouse wheel to do fine adjustments. 8, 7.5, 6.8. And ideally, I would like to get these to about 500 meters. Looks like 3.3 is about as close as they're going to go. And I think the reason for that is because, yeah, we're going to be running parallel orbits. So what I'm going to have to do to tweak that down a little bit closer is to adjust my orbit once I get around to the periapsis. So I'm just getting lined up on the blue marker here, which is a maneuver node, and I have to go 74 or 71 meters per second. overburned it a little bit. Close enough. Then I'm going to make another maneuver node here. And I'm going to see if I can tweak this down a little bit closer than 15 kilometers. How did I end up way up there? Now there should be an intersect point where they where I do cross at 8 kilometer separation. And the orange one is the next intersect. The one after that is the following one. And either one of those is going to work. They're close enough. 5.2. Now, we don't really have an error with the inclination of the orbits. Ascending node, 4 degrees. Maybe we do. Or 0.4 degrees. Okay, I guess they were slightly out of alignment. Now we're down to 0.7 kilometers. .3, 0.8, 1.7. Okay, 0.7. I think I can get them closer. You know what? I'm just going to take that. Okay, so 14 minutes until I've got to do that next burn at 38 meters a second. So I'm just going to go ahead and accelerate time to that. And you notice that I'm not even looking at the craft at this point. Now I am going to go back and I'm going to turn down my thruster power, or engine thrust rather, because it'll be much easier to do this without quite so much power available. Now if you look at the projected orbits here, the yellow one is the one that is my target. I'm running a little bit outside of that, and I've tried to basically match it up, and sometimes you'll want to do this over the course of a few different orbits. It might be easier if you can get like your AP or PE at exactly the same altitudes across, or so that it's exactly right. I've done this enough times that I'm thinking that I can probably pull it off, even though I'm not completely precise. But essentially that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get these markers here to get as close as you can for your separation on here. And in this case, it's intersect 1 is a separation of 0.8 kilometers or 800 meters. Whoops. And close enough. Okay, so that's going to be 1 kilometer of separation. And now what I need to do is I need to line up on the prograde and retrograde. Now what I've done is I've switched the nav ball. If you click in here, it'll switch between target, surface, and orbit. And I want to be in target mode because my target is the other craft, and I want to face retrograde in relation to it, or in relation to my velocity of the other craft. So right now our speed difference is 309 meters a second, and what I can do is I can make a maneuver node where our next intersect comes around, just so I have a countdown. But I'm not going to put any speed into that. Like for instance, I could theoretically add some prograde to the tune of 300 meters a second, and you can see that the purple marker there for my secondary intercept gets a little bit closer. Yeah, this is just getting confusing. So instead, I'm just going to completely cancel that and just put this here as a marker, because this is the important number here. This is the one that you want to drop down to 0. So I need to be facing retrograde on that. And it's 19 minutes away from our intercept. So I'm going to go ahead and time accelerate to get me around here. And you can see my craft and the other craft are coming closer and closer together. And if I come out of acceleration, you'll see that our current separation is 21 kilometers. And if I go out of the map, we should be able to see them at 21 kilometers. So I got to find my retrograde marker here. And 0.8 kilometers is as close as we're going to get. And right now our speed difference is 30 meters a second. So I'm going to have to completely cancel that out at our closest approach. And our closest approach is going to be in 4 minutes. Three minutes. 2 minutes. Alright, in 1 minute we're going to be at closest approach, so I need to face retrograde with relation to this. And I kind of wish that blue arrow wasn't there because it's screwing me up a little bit. And we're getting a little bit closer. Two kilometers. Okay, now before it gets too far away from us, I know I dropped that as close as I can to 0. Okay, now, at that point, we're about 950 meters away, and I can start heading directly towards it. Or more specifically, what I want to do is I want to put my prograde marker directly onto that, and that will have me moving directly towards it. And as you can see, it's pulling that prograde marker when I add thrust. Okay, so now I'm heading directly towards it at 0.8 meters a second. And our courses are trying to diverge. You can see that it's still trying to pull that off of the marker. So I'll just keep putting little tweaks onto it. And what this is doing is it's actually correcting our courses and matching them up a little bit closer in the map screen. Now, less than 1 meter a second at 900 meters, it's obviously going to take 900 seconds in order to get to it, which is 15 minutes. And I just keep pulling that prograde marker over top of the craft. And in order to transfer personnel, you probably need to get within about 250 meters or thereabouts. So you can see right now we're heading directly towards it at 2.5 meters a second. But it is still starting to drift a little bit because of the orbital diversion. And the reason that I'm not going directly over it is because if I used to use more thrust there, it's simply going to increase the speed that I'm closing at. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to correct the course without increasing the speed too much. And you get very little drift if you get onto a course directly towards it. Now mainly this is about learning how to read the nav ball and have it switched into target mode and to know what it's doing. And when I decide that I'm close enough and I want to halt my velocity, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to slide the retrograde marker directly over the target marker. And I don't actually need this maneuver node anymore. We're well past that. Closure's at 3 meters a second now. And if you start thinking you're moving a little too fast for the speed that you're going, then you can just switch it around. Now, before it was pulling the marker. At this point, it's going to push it away from the center of the nav ball. And it's dropping my velocity. So I just put the retrograde directly over the anti-target. And we've dropped from 3.1 to 2.6 now. And it is kind of a slow, methodical process that you have to go through. But after you've done it a few times, you start to get a little bit better handle on the process. And this is the basis of doing pretty much anything advanced, like refueling in orbit. You have to learn how to rendezvous, and you'll also have to learn how to dock. To do rescues in orbit, you have to learn how to rendezvous, and then you have to learn how to spacewalk. To build a space station, typically you'll need to learn how to do a rendezvous unless you're doing it all in one shot. And I'm just pushing that around a little bit, trying to keep it centered as well as I can so that I'm heading directly towards it. Now, the one thing you do not want to do is to slam into it at any sort of velocity, because that'll make for a wasted trip. And if you do have RCS thrusters mounted on the ship, for the small adjustments that we're doing here, that is actually much easier to use. And I'm just bleeding my velocity off very slowly. Now that might seem close, but keep in mind it's still like 60 feet away. Because it's meters. Now, if you were doing a rescue mission, this would probably be close enough to actually get to switch to the other craft, EVA the Kerbal, and then send them over to your main craft. If you're doing docking, of course, then you're getting down to like 0 meters. So that's a little bit differently. Okay, and just for chuckles, I'm going to swap the 2 Kerbals that are in these craft. Can I even do that? I don't know if I can do that. Have 1 EVA. Well, let's find out. Now, first we're going to turn the thrust limiter way down. Then we're going to let go. Activate RCS. And if you watched my video where I did the flyby of the moon, you'll realize that this is much easier to do at a lower setting. How do I do this now? I've got to switch to a different craft. That's done through the... map screen. No, because I can't get close enough. I know I can switch to another craft. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to do this through the tracking station, which is... orbiting Valentina. Now, it wouldn't let me fly this because if it didn't have Jeb in it. Lights. Alright, so he's in. Yeah, if they were further apart, I could be able to do this without having to go back to the tracking station. But luckily it's not too ridiculously slow to load through the SSD. Now we got control of Valentina. She's going to get in a Jeb ship. And I can tell the difference between because I put solar panels on hers but not his. Alright, now the next thing is getting them down to the ground again. So we'll go to the map screen, we'll find out where we want to come down. I think we've already passed it. Untitled spacecraft, no we haven't. Kerbal Space Center's here. We'll set this for the deorbit burn. Now you notice that these craft are not drifting very far apart. They're basically in the exact same orbit, right? Alright, just fell out of orbit. Close enough. Now I'm going to turn to radial before I kick this booster loose. You don't want to typically face prograde or retrograde, because if you kick the booster loose and you're facing prograde, then that means that it's going to be behind you, and when you start to slow down it's going to run into you. And if you go retrograde, that means you're going to be behind it, and when it starts to slow down you're going to run into it. So by going to either one of the radials or something like that, radial or normal, that will cause you to miss the booster, because it kicks it to the side of your path as opposed to in line with your path. And at this point, Valentina is on a re-entry trajectory, and there's nothing that's going to prevent that. We'll get ourselves aligned, take off SAS, and just let it find its own location. And normally it will automatically go to prograde because the heaviest part of the craft is the bottom of it, and it always wants to go heavy end first. That's the Space Center on this little peninsula here. And it's the thermometer and the barometric pressure that are both overheating. Thermometer is about to explode. Barometric pressure is going to go next. And even though it looked like I was going to be landing on the other side of the Space Center, now it looks like I'm coming in on the ocean side, on this side of it here. Because our fall is starting to come much more vertical. And I suppose I can blow the chute at this point. Set the full deployment to be probably 700. And that is pretty much the trip. Valentina took off from the spaceport. She did a rendezvous with Jeb's capsule. She did an EVA, got into Jeb's capsule. He got into her capsule. Now she's coming back to the surface, going to get recovered. And we'll call that a successful mission. Now, we didn't actually accomplish much other than demonstrating orbital rendezvous and what's involved in doing that. You can't really do it easily without having maneuver nodes. So that is sort of a necessity, but once you've got those and you've practiced this a little bit, it's not particularly difficult. If you're planning on putting a space station up or something like that, I'll typically use 125 or even 150 kilometer altitude for it, because that gives you room to go into an orbit below it, which allows you to catch up to it if you end up behind it in orbit. And if you need to, you can go above it, but I don't often do that because it's kind of wasteful of fuel. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that for this video, and hopefully for the next one I'm going to have to make a little bit of extra cash to unlock the vehicle assembly building and be able to build bigger rockets, because right now that's the blocking point from being able to do a trip to land on one of the moons, is I simply can't get a rocket up that's large enough to get to the moon and do a landing within the constraints of the vehicle assembly building, which is only 30 parts. And I did manage to build a rocket, but it was like 45 parts. It would have made it there, but unfortunately with that constraint I can't manage to do it. And I think that I've ended up unlocking a contract on this. I did take one to do a rendezvous, so that should have gotten me a little bit of cash, but I need 225,000 in order to upgrade the assembly building for that next step, and I'm at 178, so I need about another 50 grand worth of contracts. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully for the next one it'll be the trip for a moon landing, and I'll show you what's involved in building the lander for that, and we'll go from there. Bye bye.